What you are about to hear will blow your mind and give you six-pack abs without even exercising. There, that was 7 seconds. Podcast experts say that if you don't hook them in the first 7 seconds, they're going to leave. They're going to go to another podcast. You're not bored yet, are you? I got you, right? Good. Now here's some awesome stuff, starting with an intro.
Pull up a bar stool and relax.
Hey, who wants to have some fun?
You've made it to Happy Hour with John Gaskins.
Oh, no. Not again.
Get ready for entertaining local and regional sports talk that will change your life. Or not.
And by the way, when you're telling these little stories, here's a good idea. Have a point. It makes it so much more interesting for the listener.
Here's your host, John Gaskins.
Here's Johnny. Hello! Ah!
I'm back, baby! I'm back!
Oh, yeah. All right. Woo! Feel like I'm on the dance floor, circa 2009 at a club, pumping my fist. Lady Gaga, Poker Face, on deck, baby. Love it. And you know what? It should be this kind of music because guess what? Kurtiss Riggs is my first guest today. That man is a football knowledge candor machine. Cha-ching. He will do the heavy lifting today. Ben Lieber talking Vikings tomorrow. Paul Allen, voice of the Vikings, on Friday. We got John Stiegelmeier and Matt Zimmer talking Jacks this week. Mike McFeely, Mr. McFeely, drops by on Wednesday. So, as Colin Cowherd would say, we are loaded this week for the first week of Happy Hour, and thank goodness, because the euphoria of just that guest list makes me forget that I'm horrified. I am mortified of how this first week, how right now is going. How am I doing so far? Am I doing okay? Because I did not sleep well. I had nightmares. I broke out in sweats last night, and when I woke up, nauseous, anxious, almost had a quote-unquote accident, if you know what I mean. It's like just the world's crashing down. I'm not figuring out the technology. My parrot's head is falling off.
We got no food. We got no jobs. Our pets' heads are falling off. Okay, just calm down.
And then, finally, I calmed down and I remembered. Oh, it just came to me like a bright beaming sunlight breaking through the clouds. I could take solace, no matter what, in the fact that guess what? The Nebraska football team is in the, stand back, get ready for this, the Bad Boy Mowers Pinstripe Bowl, baby. Not the Toro Pinstripe Bowl, not the Craftsman Pinstripe Bowl, the Bad Boy Mowers Pinstripe Bowl, the great granddaddy of them all. Eat that. Eat that, Oregon and Ohio State. Jealous? It's been a fun, last week or so as a Husker fan. First time in 8 years they have joined the upper 97th percentile. The 97 teams going to a bowl game, finally. That's my Husker reference number one, by the way. Husker reference number one on the show. I've been so excited. I really have. I have had multiple people send a kind message how thrilled they are that I'm back and doing this again, talking sports, not just weekly in a bar with Matt Zimmer, letting him basically carry the show. But doing this every single day. Kind of got ripped, the rug got ripped underneath us 4 years ago at the old radio shop, and been through a lot of stages, bitterness, denial. Don't miss it. Can do something else. Got other jobs, side gigs, TV, real journalism, being a rodeo clown, a hype man for the Sioux Falls Canaries. It's been fun. But I just, when this became a reality that this might happen, I might get to do my own show and somebody was actually going to pay me to do it. It's been my mind's just been actually annoying the heck out of me. Just get bursting with nervousness, anxiousness, but also excitement. So, and people have reached out. I really appreciate all four of you who have reached out. Basically, my dad, my husband. I actually reached out to them and told them I have a show. And but thank you. I'm flattered. It's been nice, and it's been like, I feel like with this first show today, I feel like a politician that loves to campaign, loves to get out there and campaign. I tried to campaign. I tried to get this job, tried to get this show, and the thrill of people being receptive to it and being excited about it. Welcome back, all that. And so I got the show, right? And now here we are. It's like the politician who won the election, had that big, huge party in the ballroom on, kissing babies, the streamers, the confetti and the balloons, and then on election night, and then, oh, damn it, crap. I have to, go to work. I have to go to the office and try to write some legislation, get something passed. A lot of pressure, but I'll embrace it. So, by the way, before we dive in to the sports, to the topics of the day, big ones, a lot of people who don't live here, who know me, this is through social media channels and texts, who don't know me, or who do know me, but don't know South Dakota sports. They don't live in South Dakota, or they live in South Dakota and they don't really care about South Dakota sports, the Jacks, the Oats, all of that. They have said, "Oh, you got a show? That's great. I'm going to tune in. I can't wait. Where can I find it? I'm going to tune in on Monday." And to those of you who are doing that right now, at this point, within about 1 or 2 minutes, you're going to hear me talk about jackrabbits and coyotes. And you'll probably go, "Oh, that's great. John talked. That's what he sounds like talking these days. Cool." And you'll check out. But I hope you don't, because, look, the big reason why I'm doing this again is not just to talk to myself and people hear it, but because we live here in South Dakota, and we have two of the best college football teams in the country. And then every March, we have this giant party, our conference tournament, the Summit League tournament in Sioux Falls. And it feels like a Power 4 conference tournament. And most of the time, our men's and women's teams here in this state are in it. So if there wasn't such well-invested and well-run and successful programs, especially in football, like the Jackrabbits and the Coyotes, and then on down, Augustana, USF, but starting with those two entities, I don't know if I'd want to do this. It's a lot more exciting when you got teams going to the Final Four of college football. Both of them in your state are two of the Final Four teams. The third is up north in North Dakota. And so while the plan was to start the show in January, I figured it's December. Let's get moving right now. This is Jack's Bison Week in Fargo. It's the best rivalry in college football. The best. It's better than Alabama, Georgia. It is better than Ohio State, Michigan right now, because the sustained success at the top the last 5 years between these two schools, and 11 of the last 13 national titles, and a round two, a rematch on Saturday in Fargo for the rights to play for a national championship, the rights for SDSU to win 3 in a row and have a dynasty and have a firm control on the top spot, the rights for NDSU to seize it back in the first year of a new head coach, to take right that back from SDSU, avenge the title game lost 2 years ago. Foaming at the mouth. USD a chance to go beat the number one team in the country, Montana State, on Saturday after the biggest win in the school's Division I history in a drunk game in Vermilion. Drunk game. Not so much the fans, but the football. The football itself, the object was drunk, and then the players and the plays were drunk. It's high times. So let's rip into it.
Fake to Amar Johnson, a deep drop. Gronowski, high arcing ball down the center of the field. Griffin Wilde makes the catch in the end zone. Slides under the flagpole, and he's unscathed. Touchdown, Jackrabbits.
Tyler Merriam on the call, courtesy of SDSU Athletics. So the Jackrabbits are right there, 1A or 1B with Montana State as the favorite to win the national title right now. They're going to Fargo to play a team they lost to just over a month ago, and they're a field goal favorite because SDSU has been so dominant and looks so much more like the national title teams from the last 2 years in the games since that loss to NDSU, and then the week after on Halloween to USD. It was almost a loss, right? It should have been a loss. It was an overtime win. But since then, the Jackrabbits, including Saturday in the steamrolling of Incarnate Word, 55-14, they're up there. This is a totally different team, and I can't say they're the front runner because Montana State has been equally as dominant, if not more, most of the season. But you look at the scores since the USD overtime squeaker: 52-6, 38-7, 41-10, 45-9. Those four not against great teams. Then Montana 35-18 felt like much more of a blowout, and then Incarnate Word 55-14. And yeah, SDSU is doing this in a way that could certainly beat NDSU on Saturday and beat Montana State or USD. I think the Yotes have a great chance to win the national title as well in Frisco, Texas in January. Tell you why in a moment. But the Jacks, obviously, Mark Gronowski, he's not the player of the year. He's not the Walter Camp Guy award winner again this year because he struggled to connect with a bunch of babies early in the year. I mean, everybody was wondering, why does Mark Gronowski look so off? Well, I mean, he had two of the best receivers in the school's history, the Yankee twins, graduate and go to the NFL, at least momentarily. 107 receptions from last year gone. The slot receiver from last year had one reception career. Another reception, receiver Graham Goring had 13 catches. Griffin Wilde had 20 last year as a freshman. And 5 tight ends combined for 13 receptions. 37 catches in that group coming back. Yeah, it took a few weeks, and the Jacks were still winning games except at Oklahoma State. So the connection is clearly there, and it's not even the passing game. It's the Jacks with Amar Johnson and Angel Johnson, and then, of course, the steamroller Voorhees, the short down guy. I mean, they're just barreling over people, and they did it to perfection against Incarnate Word. I mean, the Jacks ran the ball for like 80% of the time on their first 3 or 4 drives. Run, and then guess what? It's working. So then bang, Gronowski with a perfectly timed downfield pass. The first 3 Jacks completions were 30 yards or more, 2 of them for touchdowns. I believe 35 and 35, both to Griffin Wilde, who was just a video game, a cartoon, a kamikaze when he was in high school, and here he is now, maybe at the moment the most dangerous receiver in the FCS. So, I mean, when you can pound it, and then that sets up your downfield game, and Gronowski has all day to throw behind the 605 Hogs, it's lights out and it's game over, and then, of course, Jimmy Rogers is going to have conniption fits if the Jackrabbits don't hold teams to 10 points or under. He will beat up his own players. He already can outlift probably half the team. He will beat them up, behind closed doors. I'm just kidding. But, I mean, he'll strike fear if his defense doesn't dominate, and it has lately. And most of the touchdowns, the points they've given up so far in the playoffs have just been second half after they've just rolled to giant halftime leads. 31-0, I believe, on Saturday. So SDSU is right there. They very much look like a national champion again. Montana State we'll get to. I mean, they're just trucking people, too. 52-19 over Idaho on Saturday. I'm going to file in my own mind a point about Jason Eck, the Idaho, now New Mexico coach, who used to be the OC at SDSU. Hell, screw it. I'll do it now. Jason Eck, he was kind of a gambler at SDSU. You can be when you're in the lead. Remember when he was OC? In the late 2010s, and SDSU was already a top 5 team. They're still mollywopping most teams they play. They got big leads, and every now and then he likes to show off the trick plays, the trick play, the looky what I got here. And it was fun, and sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But he was a genius, highly productive, got him the job at Idaho, but he very much Jason Eck, tied at 10 in the national quarterfinals, Friday night, ESPN audience. You're tied at 10 in Bozeman with the toughest team in the country right now to beat. You're there, late first half, and then an onside kick after scoring. Got the momentum. You don't have to be Sean Payton in the Super Bowl with the Saints. Dude, it doesn't work, and then the Bobcats proceed to just score 3 touchdowns in the blink of an eye. Good night, thanks for driving. Drive home safely, 52-19. Jason Eck strikes again this time. You can do that when you're the OC at South Dakota State. Maybe hold back on that and just try to stay in that puppy for a little while longer. But hey, he was already on his way to New Mexico to take a Group of 5 FBS job. So congratulations to Jason Eck. You look at the betting lines for the semifinal games, their rights to go play for the FCS National Championship, and they're very telling. They tell me a lot about both the Jacks and the Yotes. SDSU, the 3-point favorite in Fargo. I agree. They've played better than the Bison, who have still pretty much, ran the table except for the last minute backdoor. Holy bleep! What the hell happened? Loss to USD in the regular season finale, and stubbed their toes lightly. Not alarmingly, in a couple of these playoff games. Abilene Christian, they were trailing Abilene Christian late in the first half, 51-31. And then Mercer, 31-7. It was kind of a slog, but, nothing to really worry about. But SDSU is clearly looking better. They should be the favorite. But NDSU is good enough to win 2 more games and take back the crown. And then you have USD, 6.5-point dogs at Montana State. That's not bad. That's lower than I figured it would be. I think there's some believers in the Coyotes now because of an offense that can strike at any time down the field. And a team that, despite 3 turnovers, including 2 inside the 10-yard line, still beat Cal Davis, an evenly matched squad, by 2 touchdowns. And so, you beat NDSU the way USD did a few weeks ago. You make believers out of Vegas and perhaps FCS forecasters. And they're still supposed to lose by a touchdown, but they beat North Dakota State, who's number 2. They had SDSU number 3 beat. And now the Yotes have beaten by 2 touchdowns UC Davis, who was the team that took Montana State closest to the final bell, 30-28, out in Northern California earlier this year. So the Yotes, on the resume, when you watch them on tape, they can score from anywhere on the field. Their defense is top 10 in the country. They have the firepower, the Yotes, to beat all 3 of these teams. They've already beaten one of them and just missed a field goal in the final seconds of regulation to beat the other in Brookings. And by the way, that whole factor of going up to Montana, 25,000, that's a whole nother ballgame, a whole nother beast in Bozeman, Montana than maybe even Dana J. Dykhouse Stadium. But, the Yotes were playing in front of 19,000 on Halloween night on the road in a cold game. Not the bitter cold temperatures you get in Bozeman this time of year. But the Yotes practice outdoors. Most of their players are from the north. I wouldn't worry about the cold. The atmosphere can't be that much more hostile than Brookings. And by the way, the temperatures are going to be, as of now, in the 40s, which is about what they were when USD went to SDSU. So the Yotes very much could not only beat Montana State, but win it all. Because if they can beat Montana State, then again, they'll have SDSU, who they've beaten, and SDSU, who they had beat. So this is going to make for just a phenomenal, thrilling Saturday in the semifinals, but certainly the national championship game, whoever the combatants may be. And there's so much more to sink our teeth into all week long, again, with guys like John Stiegelmeier tomorrow, the former SDSU head coach, hoisted a national title trophy for the first time, and then a few days later handed off the torch to Jimmy Rogers. And John still lives in Brookings and watches every SDSU game, has so many stories and insight about Jimmy and the program the last few years. He'll join us tomorrow. Matt Zimmer, Mike McFeely, who's been covering the Bison for years and always has, a very colorful slant on the world. I mean, it's going to be a great week. We have Ben Lieber tomorrow to talk about the Minnesota Vikings. And real quickly about them tonight before we get to Kurtiss Riggs. Look at what happened to the Lions yesterday. Second loss. Vikings win tonight, tied with the Lions. Technically a game back in the loss column because Detroit's already won the head-to-head matchup. But if you're a Vikings fan, how can you not be confident you can beat Detroit now, yes, in Detroit, and that perhaps you can win the NFC North and maybe even get the number 1 seed? I mean, the Eagles look like the best team in the NFC right now because the Lions showed their vulnerability. They're losing good players like David Montgomery. He's got an MCL thing. The Vikings can very much catch the Lions and win the division. They just have to beat the Bears tonight. This would be a crushing loss. There have been many of them at Soldier Field over the last 25 years, but the Vikings have won there 5 years in a row, and they should. This should be a layup drill tonight in Chicago. Should be a layup drill. Maybe not a blowout, an automatic blowout, but to win, I mean, the Bears have lost a few in a row. They've lost their head coach. They're a grease fire. Caleb Williams is good, but he doesn't have much help. He's got a guy that was a quarterback's coach 3 weeks ago who's now calling the plays and a head coach, and he's going to be under duress a lot tonight against Brian Flores' defense. So the Vikings should win tonight. Now they're tied with the Lions, and did you see, I mean, look at the Lions. Again, they're banged up. Did you see what Josh Allen, how he carved up the Lion defense in Detroit yesterday? You did. And is Sam Darnold Josh Allen? No, nobody right now is. He's an alien. But Darnold's not that far off the way he's been throwing the last few games, the way he's been throwing daggers, not throwing interceptions, to one of the best wideout combos in the league, one of the best defenses in the league. Who's to say that the Vikings could not just beat the Lions, not just win the NFC North, but, maybe be in position to go to a Super Bowl? Sounds odd, sounds awful, sounds stupid, sounds hot-takey. I don't think so. This team has a lot more depth and meat to its glossy record and fun wins than it did 2 years ago when it went 13-4 and had one of the worst defenses in the NFL and a point differential where that would be of a 500 squad. This team has blown some teams out, convincing wins, good teams, mediocre teams, bad teams. They're winning far more convincingly than the Kansas City Chiefs. Huh? And Buffalo still has major holes on defense, by the way. I mean, if the Vikings and Buffalo played at a neutral site today, would it be a game? Buffalo just gave up like 6,000 yards to Matthew Stafford, 40-plus points. They just gave up another 5 touchdowns to the Detroit Lions. I like where the Minnesota Vikings were at, and I did. Early in the season, I predicted they'd be a 10 or 11 win team because Sam Darnold was going to be a much better quarterback with KOC, with Brian Flores' defense, than the crap holes, the cesspools he was playing with the first 5 years of his NFL career. Everybody else was thinking 6 or 7 wins, including Matt Zimmer. You can go back to my podcast. Nobody's listening anyway. I did predict 10 or 11 wins, and they're exceeding expectations. It's nice every now and then to get something right. But we're going to turn things over to Kurtiss Riggs now. He's going to talk about all of this in far more believable fashion. It's happy hour. Back in a moment. Hi, Harry Canary here from the Sioux Falls Canaries for Wound Socket Worcester sauce. That's right, Worcester Wound Socket, or Wound Socket Worcester sauce. It's the best Worcester sauce of the Milky Way galaxy, and it's made right here in South Dakota in Worcester. Or check that Wound Socket, South Dakota. That's right. It's delicious. Hey, do you know Wound Socket spelled backwards is tacos now? That's right. And Wound Socket Worcester sauce tastes great on steak and on hot dogs. Oh, hey, if you were a hot dog, wouldn't you want to just eat yourself? I know I would. I'd slather myself in ketchup and mustard and relish the whole jalopy. I'd be delicious. I'd have 2 of me. Anyway, Woonsocket Worcester sauce is delicious on steaks and hot dogs, and you can enjoy it wherever you are. Maybe out on a kayak. Hey, you know what kayak spelled backwards is? It's kayak. And hey, perhaps you could enjoy some Woonsocket Worcester sauce on a Barker Lounger, which spelled backwards is regular grab. Because we can all use a regular grab, not just a semi-regular grab. This is a fictitious product, and we're not making fun of the city of Woonsocket, South Dakota. It's just a really fun word that goes with Worcester sauce.
It's still happy hour with John Gaskins, so go ahead, have another.
So you get this new show, and you're thrilled about it because, you used to do this for a living every day, and it's been 4 years since you've gotten to do it, and you're so excited, and you can only have one first guest. Who's it going to be? Who's going to be the big name first guest? I mean, David Letterman had Bill Murray twice, first on Late Night, then on The Late Show. I'm no David Letterman, but Kurtiss Riggs is definitely Bill Murray here in South Dakota. He's a legend. Everybody knows his name when it comes to the sport of football. The Riggs Football Academy, which is now the Sanford Football Academy, and, of course, the 11-time Indoor Football League champion of the Sioux Falls Storm. He coached them for 20 years, and during some of that time, his earlier stages, he was also the quarterback's coach and co-offensive coordinator for his best friend, Kalen DeVore, at the University of Sioux Falls. Of course, together they went like 69-3, 67-3, whatever it was, 3 national titles in 4 years, on the headset together, calling all the offenses. And, this was both for their alma mater. A decade before that, they had won a national title together. Kurtiss, the record-setting quarterback, Kalen, the wide receiver, and they won a national title at tiny little NAIA University of Sioux Falls. Kalen, of course, now the head coach at Alabama, and Kurtiss, of course, just still a living, walking legend around here. And he's also, of course, a wickedly talented, candid analyst for high school and college football games, high schools on Metro Sports TV, then later on the South Dakota State Championships on SDPB, and then, of course, college games on Midco Sports for the Jackrabbits. And he knows everybody. He knows everybody who's in football who means something at the junior levels, high school levels, college levels here. Big connections to North Dakota State, a lot of it through his academy. And so he's just the perfect first guest to talk about the Jacks and the Yotes and the Bison and the FCS. He also has a keen eye for all things quarterbacks, all things play callers, all things NFL. So we're going to get into all of that here as December football, is really reaching a fever pitch. But first, I mean, Kalen and Kurtiss have such a fascinating history together, and they talk all the time, probably text every day. And Kurtiss goes and visits Kalen in Alabama, and then Kurtiss has the aspect of his son Peyton, who was his OC for the Sioux Falls Storm in Kurtiss's last year for the Storm a year or two ago. So I want to talk about the fascinating life of Kurtiss being Kalen's friend, Peyton's dad, and then a little later on we'll kick around the Jacks, the Bison, and all that jazz. But, I think a lot of you have kind of been wondering, what's Kurtiss up to? Is he going to move to Tuscaloosa? I sat down with him at lunch earlier today. All right, first guest, new show. I know it's the honor of your life, but what I am most thrilled by is that you were willing to have a beer with me. So let's raise a glass. Cheers. I was nervous about this. This is the lunch hour, but you're your own guy. You're an adult. You can handle this. No big deal. We're having a beer, and we're having local beer too.
We are. I think I'm of age.
You can check. Do you ever get carded still at stores?
No.
Okay.
No. When you go in some places where they have to card everyone and scan your ID, I think even then they're wondering, do we still do this? But no, not always, ever.
And I love it that you chose a Fernson's Lion's Paw. I got the Ben Strawberry Ale. So we're doing good for the world. We're drinking beer and talking about football and doing good for the world. How are you? How are things?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. I'm staying busy, and I run the football academy now. It's a little different. It's Sanford Sports Academy now, and but it's been great. It's been an awesome, just taking from a partnership to now being fully engulfed into the Sanford world. And my boss out there, Steve Young and Todd Kolb, are awesome. I mean, they're great to work with, and they're going to continue to do awesome things out at the sports complex.
Yeah, as I was mentioning to you before we turned the mics on, we have so much football to get to, but I mean, people keep asking, what's Kurtiss up to? When's he going to leave? I mean, for 2 years. Is he going to go to Washington? Is he going to go to Alabama? I mean, Kalen DeBoer is your best friend, and he's one of the top coaches in college football, has one of the top jobs. And what's the answer to that? Because you've got literally an academy to run. You have an awesome job. You have these great football gigs. You got a good life. But what's going on there? Do you even know?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, kind of. I guess. Life happens, and I think as life throws you curveballs, you kind of got to go with them. Sometimes you maybe got to slap it out in the left field, me being a lefty. Instead of trying to pull it. And, Washington was a very real possibility, and me going out there. And then he got the job at Alabama. And but I think, maybe at some point maybe we'll see Kalen and I come together. He's doing awesome. I mean, I don't know if people realize everything he has to deal with, the pressures that he has. But I don't know if there's a better guy to handle those things than what he's having to deal with as a first-year coach going in behind, a legend like Nick Saban.
I mean, you tell me. I'm going to guess he tries to kind of stay in his bunker and not read social media or watch the Paul Feinbaum show. I'm sure he's acutely aware of just how hounding people and fans down there are. And if you're not contending for a national title or making the 12-team playoff in its first year of existence, people aren't happy. But how is he handling it, and how much do you you can't help it, you got to scratch the mosquito bite and check out what people are saying about him?
I don't check message boards or anything like that. Yeah. Not at all, not one single bit. And that's something I just learned from coaching. There's just really nothing good. As maybe it might be good one day, it's going to turn ugly another day. And the coaches, watching them work, they're not a part of it at all. But they're very insulated within the football program. They're going nonstop, either recruiting, game planning, portal, NIL, discussions of guys entering the portal, just looking at the whole big picture. They really have very little time for any of it. In fact, my son, we were at the DeBoers for Thanksgiving. He was blown away with things he would say that he was seeing on social media, and Kalen was shocked by it. Kalen, he would have no idea about certain things, and Kalen or Peyton was just like, man, it just shows you he really does not see or hear of any of these things. And you get in a world where everything is dictated, where it's either constantly putting out fires, or if you're not putting out fires, you're out there and you're just grinding. And he's grinding with trying to keep his players, keep his recruits, and go out and find the other best recruits or portal players that have entered and trying to get the best team, and then prepping also for a bowl game. And people, yes, he was extremely disappointed they didn't make the playoffs. Did he feel like they should? He did, and there's legitimate arguments every way possible. He just felt like they were one of the 12 best teams, which I think they were. But he's also aware that a loss to Oklahoma was crushing. That was a tough one. But you got to move on. You got to keep going. And the expectation at Alabama is you got to win, you got to beat Auburn, and you got to be in that playoff system.
I mean, what a roller coaster. You get hired to take over for Nick Saban, the greatest ever, at Alabama, and, you go through whatever you go. The excitement, obviously, the euphoria, life-changing money, even more so than Washington. You went down there and visited him shortly after it happened, and several times since. You've gone to a few games, you've stayed at his house, and look what they've been through, that euphoria of the Georgia win, and they're riding high. They're looking like the best team in the country, and then boom, Vanderbilt, and then boom, Tennessee, and then just when they're back on the upswing and on some people's good graces, the Oklahoma game. Like, you've known him for how long? 30 plus years.
Yep.
He's been through a lot. You've been through a lot, but how different or the same of a guy is he? How's he handling all this?
Well, it's the exact same. I mean, he hasn't changed one bit. The only thing is his life is way busier, and the magnitude of the fires he has to put out are significantly greater than what he was accustomed to at the USF days or Fresno State days or even the Washington days. I don't think people realize the difference of even the difference between Alabama and Washington. Even though they played in the national championship at Washington, the expectation and stress level and the magnitude of being in the SEC at the top program in the SEC compared to playing in the Pac-12 is drastically different.
Did you ever sense this year at all? Did he ever sense that like his job might be in jeopardy? I'm serious.
No. Yeah,
I mean, just because of the 12-team thing.
No, I don't. I think he has an AD that's very realistic. That Kalen is walking into a hornet's nest of the expectations, but also knowing Coach Saban got out, and he got out for a reason. And Kalen had to inherit that roster, which is good. It's good. It's a good roster. But knowing that there's going to be some uphill battles, and I think he's done a great job of putting out a lot of those fires that people don't even know about. But then also, when they have that tough loss, the Vanderbilt loss was tough. They're number one in the nation after the Georgia win, and they go into Vanderbilt and they play a terrible game against a good opponent. I think people now can say Vanderbilt was good.
Yeah, I mean, a week or two later they were taking Texas.
Lost by a touchdown to Texas, and but I think that one. I think the Tennessee game. In fact, when I talked to Kalen, I'm like, hey, that's the one game I did not go to. And I asked, I was like, how difficult was it at Tennessee? He's the toughest place we've ever played, ever. He goes, it was like your body was shaking. It was so loud there. He goes, I've never been to a place where it's had more of an effect than at Tennessee. And I asked at LSU, I was like, how was that at the beginning of the game? I go, it seemed like it was comparable. And he goes, not even close. So that one you kind of could deal with a little bit, but the Oklahoma one was tough. And that was one where all four quarters you're like, nothing is going.
Just miserable.
Yeah. And then when they finally do get the touchdown, you get this unheard of, weird, unusual, made up call that since then has had repercussions. But I mean, who knows if it would have had an effect in the game or what? But just they couldn't get anything to go their way.
What is his secret sauce? His special thing beyond X's and O's that has gotten him to where he's gotten to today, and that will withstand whatever this is there.
Yeah, his strength is relationships. He's so good at walking into a room and making every single person in that room, if it's the equipment manager, if it's the assistant to the assistant athletic trainer, if it's the star player, Jalen Milroe, I mean, any of them, making them feel that he has the utmost care and concern for all of them. And he does. He actually does. He's so good at building those relationships and then following through with them.
You mentioned the places you've visited, and I've been jealous of your jet-setting college football tour the last few years, from Seattle to Eugene to Lansing, Michigan for a game. And did you ever go to L.A. or?
Oh yeah, many times. Yeah, Rose Bowl.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that thing.
Yeah.
But this year, I mean, I've heard you tell the stories elsewhere, but like the craziest place sounds like Baton Rouge. Was that the
by
highest?
By far. I mean,
give us a story. Give us a taste.
The things that were said to me just wearing an Alabama shirt were things that I've never, ever heard before. And I coached indoor football for 20-some years. And you had drunk people right along the wall that would say the most god-awful things. And they would say them to me in indoor football, and I would be like, hey, your kid's sitting right next to you. And they would give me their feelings about what I thought about, or what they thought about saying that to them, even with their kid right there. Not even comparable to what I heard in Baton Rouge. And that was an event. It was an event that thankfully Alabama just blew the socks off of LSU, because the things that we heard from the LSU fans, and then trying to get out of the stadium and just get out of there and get back to our hotel was such an adventure that it made it all memorable. But the best part was Bama getting the big win.
Yeah, no kidding. They did win that game. By the way, how much do you miss, if at all, the coaching the indoor football?
Not at all. I think some of it's because I've been able to live vicariously a little bit through, Peyton coaching now and him now taking that job with Arizona Rattlers. And it's an awesome setup he's got going there. And so it keeps me into it enough to where I get enough of the fix. But I have not once craved or missed the recruiting. And even when I went and watched some of the games, missed the game element. And I think, I actually knew I was done in 2019. 2019, we beat Arizona Rattlers in the championship. And Todd said he was going to sell. And then the new owners.
Todd Tryon, the owner.
Yep. The new owners were coming in. And me being a part of that was kind of part of the agreement. And I said, sure, let's do this. Because I appreciated them coming in when Todd had to sell. They were willing to come in and keep the team going. And then they walked into COVID, and right after COVID, we had a terrible year. I felt like I couldn't end my career on that. And then Peyton said he wanted to come back and coach. And I thought, what a great opportunity. I could try to redeem after that terrible year and have my son, coach with us. And then we made it to the championship and lost to Bay Area in Vegas. And I thought, what a great time for me to get out here.
For sure. But what was that year like with Peyton, though? I mean, just enjoying you two. Of course, you're doing all these games for SDPB, the state championships for Midco when they had high school football, and then for Metro Sports with me. And a couple times when you were on the road, you go to Alabama games, and Peyton slide in there. And, you kind of asked me before the season, could Peyton do some games? I'm, well, sure. I'm sure he's just like you. I had never heard him. And I'm kind of like, okay, is this going to be a Nepo baby? Is this going to be, are we going to regret this? And it was like, oh, my God, this guy is a savant. Yeah. I mean, even more than you are. So what was it like working with him for your last year of coaching?
Well, it was kind of like beating your head into a wall at times.
Because he get to call the play. You had been calling the plays all those years, and then and then he called the plays.
Right,
and you're the boss.
Yeah, he was often. It was hard for me to sit back and just watch the game. I don't know how some of the head coaches do that. When I would offer my opinions offensively, he was stubborn and hard-headed enough to stick with what he wanted to do. And then there was times where I said, you know what, like, hey, I'm the head coach. Besides being your dad, here's what you're going to do. And then he knew when it was serious enough to, okay, I better listen this time. But he gets it. I mean, just like you said, calling games, I knew right away that if he was going to be involved, he understands, he knows what it takes and what you have to do. And really, to be honest, like, he had the new creative, innovative ideas to do things that I was kind of getting away from. You kind of get stuck in a rut and do the same things over and over, and we needed that change.
I would love to be a fly on the wall between you two, because the one game that you guys did together with me, it was just I don't know, it was like football. They keep using the word euphoria, but I mean, just to have the two of you bounce it off of each other.
I think we do a good enough job too with, the dry humor, sarcasm towards each other, and
you're incredible at it.
and know that where we're going with it.
Yeah.
And that's why it's fun to talk to him every day and hear about what's going on in Arizona and how it is working with Coach Guy, because Coach Guy, is like me. He's had a very successful career, but he's different personality-wise, and to learn and hear Peyton adjust to that is rewarding.
How's he different from you?
Well, he's not near as funny. He's not near as good-looking. I mean,
right.
Those two things first, and then he is very type A, and with me, I was very willing to let my assistants be a huge part of our success, and I think he's one that wants to have his hands controlling everything, and Peyton's he's picked up on that. He's learned that. He knows you got to be careful when you offer your advice, and you have to be very confident in what you're offering too, because it's going to get questioned and picked apart.
Pretty proud of him, aren't you?
Yeah. Oh yeah. He's done a great job, and he's one that, was playing college basketball and felt like, I want to coach. And he went to USF and coached with Coach Johnson in basketball and thought, I feel like I have more of a say in football than in basketball.
I can't imagine spending more than one day with Chris Johnson.
He loved it. He did.
Oh, yeah. Chris is hilarious.
Yeah.
He's a lot like you. He can be a little curmudgeon-y and sarcastic and blunt, and you better be a certain type. But anyway.
Yeah, and Peyton loved it. He loved it, and you're right when you describe him. And he had some assistants, though, that were smart enough to know when to kind of call Chris out, but also teach Peyton, like, hey, you do not talk right now. As we walk into this locker room, do not say a word. And so he picked up and learned and absorbed a lot of that. And then when he went out to Washington, and worked for Kalen out there, he picked up a lot and learned a lot from a lot of the coaches, Ryan Grubb, Eric Schmidt, who's now the UND head coach.
Grubb's now the OC of the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah.
They're okay.
So he's built a lot of relationships, but also learned what the Power 5 college football lifestyle was, and that was something that kind of pushed him away to where he wanted to come back to indoor.
Yeah, the recruiting.
And the hours and how there was very little life outside of the football.
Yeah, well, and he wanted to go his own way. He said he was tired of the same roads in Sioux Falls and wanted to get out of his old man's shadow, and he's now at the Arizona Rattlers, and that's awesome. Do you mind if I eat while we talk?
Yeah,
I'm eating.
Yeah.
And then let's talk some ball. How about that? Kurtiss Riggs. More Kurtiss Riggs on the first happy hour with John Gaskins. That's my pathetic attempt at a transition noise between the show and a break from the show. We call these ad breaks, and this is an ad for SiouxFallsLive.com. The very place you might be consuming this podcast right now. And if you're not, if you're doing it on Apple or Spotify, cool. But SiouxFallsLive.com, that's my employer, and that's the place to find the best day-to-day news coverage and sports coverage there is in Sioux Falls. So many grizzled veterans who are still at the top of their game, of their craft, notably Patrick Lally, who used to be the editor of the Argus Leader, now writing columns. He is on top of the city and state politics beat. He writes candid columns, big picture items, but he digs deep into the details, and there is so much more. In sports, Matt Zimmer, 20 years covering the Jacks, the Yotes, Augie, USF, the high schools, everything. He's the authority on all things SDSU athletics, and yet he still is not too good to come on down and cover the smaller colleges and the high schools. And Trent Singer with Augie Hockey and the Preps. Nathan Swaffer with USD coverage, and they've just got it all. It's the best place to go and find the best news and sports coverage in Sioux Falls, and right now, you can do it. It's all worth it. I mean, seriously, start a free trial, but look, 3 months for 99 cents a month, and then it turns into $9.99 a month, or you can just pop it out right now, $60 a year for the best coverage of news and sports in Sioux Falls. It's not boring. It's accurate. It dives deep. They ask the tough questions. They put authority figures to the fire, and out you get the best coverage of local news. SiouxFallsLive.com.
It's still happy hour with John Gaskins. This round's on me.
Now with bowl games is the portal. Having that first portal window.
Yeah, coaches leave, they follow. I figured that's happening everywhere, so it's not that big of a loss. But I don't know. It's the state of being a Husker fan is you're just trapped. You're just trapped. I mean, you asked me if I'm still a fan. I think that was sarcastic, but yeah. But every Saturday you kind of wake up and you're ready. Well, where am I going to get hit today? Am I going to get hit in the teeth, in the throat, in the stomach, in the nuts? I don't know. Some games it's all of them.
I've never met a fan base that is more pessimistic, but then also the expectation is so high.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unbelievable. It's like, oh my God, what are we going to do to screw this one up? And yet, if we're not winning the Big Ten, then
that's not true anymore. That's not true anymore. No one's expecting to win the Big Ten.
Oh yes, there is the expectation. It's just no one will verbally say it because they'll say, hey, we're not going to have a. You'll set yourself up for doom. But the expectation is still we should be greater than what we are.
The thing is like even 10 years ago when Bo Pelini was was taking them to just the the New Year's Day games like the Gator Bowl or the one in the Citrus Bowl, whatever it is now. Whereas back, Osborne's Day and whatever, even Solich, it was Fiesta, Orange, Sugar. Like, it was disappointing not to win the Big 8 and go to the Orange and play for a national title or be in the top 5. And then it was like, these lowly Citrus Bowls and Gator Bowls. And now you die to go to those games. But I think most Husker fans are like, after 8 years without a bowl at all, are actually kind of like, okay, fine, Pinstripe Bowl in New York. I'm not going. I'm not going to go.
Yeah.
I wonder how many Husker fans will go. They travel well. But anyway, that's way too much time that we need to devote to that. Kurtiss Riggs is here, and there's so much better college football to talk about, like the stuff going on right here. I opened my quote unquote first show of this version with just like, we better not take this for granted. How lucky are we? But that includes you, who commentates on these games as part of your living. That we have this high quality of football and these high stakes of games, especially for the Jackrabbits, year after year after year, and now the Yotes are getting into the mix. I mean, it's amazing.
I think this is a year more so for USD than anyone else. I think for them to go to the semifinals for the first time ever is quite the statement.
Sorry, I got to use two hands to eat my salad. Sorry.
I think they have a huge uphill challenge now facing them with the semifinal game. I was shocked. I don't know if you watched the state game, but the ESPN commentators, when they said how Mark Gronowski passed up 7-figure offers.
I did hear that.
Yeah.
Was that not true?
Well, I don't know. I'm not going to say it was or wasn't, but for them to say that on air of that magnitude, and then also Tucker Large passed up over $500,000 offers, I couldn't believe they were giving these numbers out and saying that.
Why couldn't you believe that? That's the day we live in now.
I think it's okay to say he was offered to go to these Power 5 schools, and significant offers. But I think to say it was a 7-figure offer now starts to make, well, who was offering that? Why, and I do know he did have a lot of Power 5 schools after him. He did, without a doubt. And there was significant money, I'm sure, passed along. But I just thought, you know what? I mean, his commitment is very strong to SDSU. There's no doubt about that. But maybe leave out that part of the 7-figure offer.
Tucker Kraft was 6 figures, 2 years ago, and things have moved up very quickly. But what, they were quote unquote struggling by their standards early in the year.
Yeah.
That seemed to be, I'm sure you're a quarterback and you understand this. To me, the translation is almost entirely new receivers, a bunch of guys who hadn't played a lot of varsity ball in college. And then now they're dynamite again.
I had the same discussion with an alumni that was working out at the Sanford Fieldhouse, and he just comes up to me right away after broadcasting a game, and he goes,
One of the early games?
One of the early. And
he struggled just a bit?
And it wasn't even about Gronowski. He was like, we're inept. We can't do anything offensively. We don't utilize the tight ends. We can't attack. Gronowski's off, and you can see he's just slug. And I stopped him and said, well, yeah, I could see how they would struggle losing the Yankee twins, Zach Hines, 4 starting offensive linemen, All-American tailback. I mean, stop me now if you're kind of catching on what I'm throwing at you here. And he still looked at me, gazed, and I was like, hey, they lost the majority of their starting lineup on a very explosive offense, and you got to kind of figure things out all over again. And I think they've done an unbelievable job of that. And yeah, the timing issues that Mark would have would be because of a lot of those situations. I mean, you have new receivers, new guys you're throwing in, new timing with offensive line, new play calling. That's something else. Lujan left to go to Northwestern. People kind of forgot about that too. I think to say that they're in the situation they are is quite commendable by Coach Rogers and his staff. Oh my gosh!
You guys keep talking. My food.
I cannot believe that you're doing that. Yeah.
Keep going.
And then defensively,
I can't even look at you right now.
An entire new defensive line, and Tucker Large has been battling through injuries all season long.
Yeah.
They lost 2 of their other safeties for the season. Adam Bach, though, has been a mainstay, and you just see like their performance against Incarnate Word you could see they were playing vindictive, that Incarnate Word scored over 15 points against them last time, because I think they averaged 13 points is what they give up, and Incarnate Word got, I think, 21 last time, and so they were not going to let that happen again.
All right, so the North Dakota State game was late October, and it was neck and neck, and nobody was scoring, and then the Bison go on like a 90-yard drive, barged down the sea for several minutes, and then that was ball game. How different are the Jacks? They're a field goal favorite after losing up in Fargo, not even 2 months ago. Does that feel right?
I think I wouldn't have been surprised if it would have been a pick-em. I think both teams are built very similar. Very strong quarterback play, good running game. They have some go-to receivers, and then also very solid defensively. If I had to give the edge, I would say SDSU is better defensively. But the best part about it is the way that game ended. That cheap shot on Gronowski, the bench is kind of clearing, just really sparking the rivalry back into this whole game. And even though NDSU was able to pull that out, you walked away feeling like, oh, these two teams are going to meet again. And here they are in the semis.
Do you see a difference between a Tim Palaschik NDSU and a Matt Enns NDSU in 1 year?
I do. I saw it right away with, Enns was very strong, especially with Tyler Roll as his offensive coordinator, recruiting the Midwest, recruiting this area. And as the new coaching staff came in, they kind of had a more diverse, spread out recruiting philosophy. And they're still recruiting the Midwest, but it's not near the presence. Tyler Roll was, he was a pit bull. He was in every home, making his presence known, even as SDSU started to surpass them. Early on, when I first took over the academy, every kid's goal was to play at NDSU, and then it would be SDSU, USD, UND. That changed drastically. Now every kid that comes in, in the way things have changed, every kid is, I want to play Division I football, and then SDSU is right there along that, and then it's NDSU, USD, UND, and you're even seeing now USD start to creep up there with some of the success. They still don't quite have the same presence in the area that SDSU does. SDSU does such a good job of being visible anytime they can, and making their presence known with everyone.
All right, who's winning that game?
I think SDSU wins. I think Montana State wins. Hey, I will say, though, USD is very good. Here's one thing I've seen, though. They should have won the SDSU game. And the Cal Davis game should not have even been close. Yeah. The one area I think, and Coach Davis is a great offensive coordinator, he needs to quit trying to win the game in one play, though. He has a phenomenal tailback that gets stronger as the game goes on. And just keep feeding him the ball. Keep giving him the ball. Don't try a reverse pass. Keep giving him the ball. And then when you need to, like he did against Cal Davis, find Carter Bell. That kid is tremendous. He looks like the kid that is going to be carrying water bottles out onto the field for everyone, and he is uncoverable. You cannot cover that out route, that corner route he runs, and then when it is close, he's so good at going up and getting the ball, and they've done a tremendous job of protecting Aiden Bauman this year.
So I was texting with a Coyote super fan that always used to call into the old radio show, and I still converse with almost every week on DMs, and he said the same thing at 28-14 after they had turned it over twice near the goal line, up by 7. It should be 42-14 right now. Yeah. And then we were both in the third quarter thinking, why are they just not handing the ball off to Travis Tice? Yeah. And then they finally kind of did that.
And they subbed him out, which I understand. You're going to rotate, but then when you have a pivotal time to really put the game away, he needs to be the guy carrying it. And they rotate, and the guy fumbles that he rotated for. And then they brought Tyson, and he's the one guy, though, that you see as the game is going. Everyone else shows signs of weakness. He gets better and better as the game goes.
How indestructible does Montana State look? It's because it's a touchdown or so spread right now in Bozeman.
I think a big part's playing at home. The weather's going to play a part. It fits very well into their style. Their quarterback is tremendous. He is so good at running and passing. They have very good skill guys, and then they're very solid defensively. USD, though, is going to put up a fight. They're very good O-line, very good D-line. That's where they've really improved. And then if they can protect Bauman, that'll be the big question. But they showed, Idaho showed that there's some home run capabilities against Montana State. I think their secondary struggles to match up with some speed, and Idaho exploited it. It's just Idaho got greedy. They tried to go for that onside kick, and it was like as soon as Montana State got that great field position after that, they just put the game away.
I know. Did you think to yourself at that point, oh, that's a little bit the Jason Eck we knew at SDSU? You called a bunch of Jackrabbit games, and he was the coordinator. I mean, obviously, he lit it up and moved on to a head coaching job, and now he's at New Mexico.
Yeah.
So he can call some plays, but that onside kick was a little.
I think there's a time to be Dan Campbellish, and a time where you got to let things play out a little bit, and that was one of them. That's one where you're kind of shooting your silver bullets a little too early. You have these special bullets that you prepare for and think we got these at certain times. Well, his mindset was probably after a big play. That's when it's going to be there. Your defense had just gotten a stop. They'd just gotten an interception. You hit a big play on them. You had all the momentum. He thought maybe carry that out. It would have been better to kick off. Now, hindsight, it's easy to say now, but I think that silver bullet maybe would have been warranted a little later in the game when there really is the chance of no expectation of it.
All right, Tommy Mellott is a quarterback.
Yeah, very good.
Your analysis, your thoughts as a quarterback.
I mean, tremendous player, savvy, smart, 3-year starter. You can see how, in years past I've called his games, and you see the nagging injuries that affected his game. Well, he's healthy now, and he looks very difficult to handle. I think their starting tailback will be back now, too. They had a freshman playing this last game who looked really good. I think they're just like NDSU and SDSU, where they're very good on the O-line, very good on the D-line. They have a veteran quarterback that can run or pass, as State and NDSU have, and then they have some go-to guys, but then ultimately they're going to rely on their defense to be their strength.
I feel like any of these 4 teams can win it all.
I think so. I think USD has really proven that they are at that level. They've shown with that the win against NDSU, what many say they should have walked off that field in Brookings with a win. They've answered the call each time. It's the one thing I saw at Cal Davis, though, is when you have a chance to put a team away, the great teams do it. And they continue to let Cal Davis stay in that game. I mean, they, just like you said, they had those chances in the red zone to just bury Cal Davis, and they just couldn't do it until finally at the end they started to rely and ride their stallion there and get him the ball, and it opened things up. And Cal Davis was playing without their star tailback, who got hurt in the first half, and that definitely affected things. And the quarterback just continued to give USD a chance. USD's secondary is very good, though. Ball hawking secondary. They continue to get turnovers, and they were very good about when USD's offense would turn the ball over, coming back out and getting a turnover back.
Hey, how about Bob Nielsen? 2 years ago, some were wondering if they weren't wondering if he might get fired, which apparently that was never a possibility, but David Herbster, the AD, felt compelled after a 58-17 home loss to finish the season against Northern Iowa, who was 5-5. That David Herbster is like, I am hijacking this post-game press conference and just telling everybody that Bob Nielsen's coming back. And then he does. And then the last 2 years, my God, they got quarterfinals and semifinals. And I asked Bob about this at the post-game presser on Saturday, and he kind of started to adjust his tie and his vest a little bit. I don't think he appreciated being reminded of 2022. And then he, took a deep breath and just said, I'm trying to forget about that. That just wasn't us. That was, a blip on the radar. What have been your observations of the way he has slowly built this thing? It's been 9 years, but the last 2 years, bang, bang, quickly got him to that level.
Well, I think one thing was getting a drop-down quarterback was huge. Getting Bauman was a difference maker, and then start to fill in the pieces around it. And you saw where they started to do that. They started to build that offensive line. They started to go out and get athleticism on the defensive line. They've always been very good at getting some skilled guys at certain spots, but then starting to get the guys up front that can compete in the Missouri Valley. That's where it dictates all your success, is in the trenches. You're right, though. A lot of people thought after that time, that loss to Northern Iowa, it might be the end. He's the utmost professional. There's never that in question. And David Herbster obviously saw and knew, hey, he's on the right track, so you got to give him credit. But he's also the guy that hired Nielsen over. I mean, they interviewed Kalen at that, and
That's right.
So I mean,
And Kalen probably wanted that job, didn't he?
I think he would have considered it. I mean, he was. I believe he was at Eastern Michigan at that time. And I think he was interested. I mean, he obviously enjoyed Division I football, but it never came to that. It seemed like the whole time it was Nielsen's job for the taking, and there was just some backup plans. And so Herbster always knew he wanted him. He got him, and then he had the wherewithal to give him the extension and then get out of being an AD, and now works for Sanford and does an awesome job for us.
Yes, it's amazing how Kalen doesn't get the UND job, and I'm sure they've been reminding whoever made that decision up in Grand Forks to this very day, and then he doesn't get the USD job, and look what the jobs he ended up getting. It's a pretty serendipitous career, to say the least.
Things have fallen in place. The USD one, who knows if he would have. I mean, that one, he was, after the UND deal, he was very leery about being used as, hey, you're bringing me in as just an extra and a backup. And so I don't know how serious I am about this, but I definitely will talk to you. Yeah. And so that happened. But Herbster knew who he wanted, and he got him. And Bob, I mean, you look at now, he's got them to where they're competing at the Missouri Valley every year. They're always in the top. And now he's getting the big win against NDSU, and just about should have had that win against a two-time defending champ, SDSU.
Okay, quick hitters to walk things off with Kurtiss Riggs. Let's go to the NFL and Vikings. How real do they feel? I mean, I look at them. You look at how vulnerable the Lions feel right now with their defense. I mean, I know that was Josh Allen, but I mean, I think Sam Darnold and that offense could do damage when they go to Detroit. And the rest of the NFC, Philly's tough. But I mean, I think some Vikings fans have the PTSD, and nobody nationally is even mentioning the Vikings in the mix. I heard a couple talk shows today. They're mentioning the Eagles, Bills, Lions, even some teams with worse records than the Vikings. And how do you feel about them?
I actually, watching the Packers last night, I feel like they're the team that's on the rise, more so than anyone else. I think the Vikings have done a tremendous job, but I just sit there and wait for Darnold to be Darnold. At some point, you feel like it's going to happen, and then you won't be surprised. But I sound like a Nebraska fan doing that. I do. But he's had a great season. I would be very cautious about offering him some big contract and ruining everything with what you're doing with all the young players that you're getting. And I think that the move to get Daniel Jones was a very, very smart move to have a very quality starting quarterback in case things don't work out with Darnold.
How impressed are you by Kevin O'Connell and the way he breeds
he's
quarterbacks?
Great. Yeah, I think his play calling's tremendous. I think, when everyone knows that Jefferson is going to get the ball, they still find ways to get him the ball. And I think that's a creative mind that is something that people undervalue and don't appreciate enough, because the defense is always knowing where that player is. Everyone on the defense is eyeing Jefferson. As the play starts and then he moves, everyone in the second level, the linebackers, the DBs, are all watching where he is and knowing that it's predicated a certain way to get him the ball, but yet they still can't stop. And I think that's a great play caller.
Okay. Chiefs on the other side. Mahomes a little dinged yesterday. Let's just play a hypothetical game. I mean, the Chiefs just keep kind of skating by, winning down to the wire, nail biters against much lesser teams. Eventually, they're going to have to play in the playoffs, albeit maybe entirely at Arrowhead. But eventually, maybe I'll get a box for this. Thank you. But let's close our eyes. Carson Wentz. We spent a lot of time watching him up here and with the Eagles, and he's the backup. And if it had to be him, what does that do to Kansas City in the Super Bowl scope?
Well, I mean, they're not an offensive juggernaut.
No, exactly.
I think the one thing that
running
Wentz,
and defense, man, they got it both.
Yeah, the thing Wentz isn't going to do though is when you got to secure the game at the end. Getting that big first down that Mahomes is so good at. I mean, he's so unbelievable. But they're almost like the tortoise and the hare. You know, everyone else has got this motor on their boat, and the Chiefs just have a sail, and they're just letting the wind blow them along. And you wonder, are they going to get sunk, or are they going to just continue to eventually blow by those motorized vehicles that break down at some point? Because the way they're winning games, you do feel like it's fate that's on their side.
So, do you have an answer to that, or do you?
I think the Ravens are still. I mean, I saw what the Bills did, but I think the Ravens give huge matchup problems for the Bills. I think defensively they can do some things to create problems for Josh Allen, who is, I think, the MVP right now. What he did the last few games is unbelievable, and to think, you know, everyone thought he was the bad guy when they let Diggs go. And it showed that, you know, sometimes when you get maybe that person that's putting himself in front of the team will get better at the end.
Hey, thanks for doing this. Appreciate
it's awesome. Good luck.
By the way, and Josh Allen's an alien, but I mean, you know, you could tell us about that, but he's an alien.
He's from Wyoming.
That's right.
Yeah.
Do you have a special place in your heart?
No, not at all.
Okay.
I don't go. But to go there, I know Kalen recruited hard for him at Eastern Michigan.
Really?
They felt like they had him, and Coach Creighton he couldn't give the vote of confidence to pull the trigger on it. And by the point they finally did, Wyoming had him secured.
Who's your favorite guy that does what you do on Saturdays, on Sundays? In the Romo, Brady, Greg Olson's thing.
You know, I think Greg Olson's good. I think Romo's good.
Better than Brady.
Yeah. I think Brady's still getting there. I think he's got some learning to do. But I enjoy Olson. I think sometimes he maybe gets a little too much on the tight end perspective, but sometimes that's really interesting too. I think all of them, though, I wish they would just say what they think. You know, I think they hold back. I think they're so afraid to hurt feelings. And I think sometimes maybe I say too much, but I'm just calling it as I see it. It's not offensive to the coaches or players. It's just, hey, here's things that are happening, and I'm trying to say what I think most people are thinking at the same time.
After a high school game or a college game, do you get your texts or people like, what the hell? What are you saying about me?
Yeah.
Or they haven't even seen it yet, they don't know what you said about them?
Well, I know I received more texts about the comment that I said in the state championship game when Lincoln was playing Brandon Valley, and they scanned the sideline of Lincoln, and I said, it looks like Coach Frenberg has 19 assistant coaches.
Uh-oh.
And they all had vests on. I don't know if you saw this. They all had vests on.
Okay.
And I go, what, are they doing a promotion for Lululemon? I mean, what are we doing here?
Okay.
You know, and
that's funny.
My phone blew up more, and Coach Frenberg, he texted me after about Lululemon, and then he was laughing.
Of
he
course.
Loved it. I mean, he's
You're
great.
buds.
Yeah.
And he coached with you, for you.
I think some of that humor, bringing that in at times is good, and tremendous high school championship game. You called it too.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, I thought
with Andre Fields.
I thought it was a phenomenal game. That two teams stuck to their game plans, and two pivotal plays decided that game.
We could do this all day, but let's save more for another time.
All right, thanks, John.
Right.
The one, the only, Kurtiss Riggs. Man, what a fun guy to have beers with, huh? That's what I'm trying to do here every day on Happy Hour with John Gaskins. Tomorrow, Ben Lieber. I mean, we're taping at 10:30 in the morning, so I don't know if he's ready to put some hair on the dog, but I am. And we'll talk about all things that happened with the Minnesota Vikings tonight, and if they're a bona fide Super Bowl contender and someone's going to put them on the radar. And then we'll have John Stiegelmeier, the legend, on all things Jackrabbits on tomorrow's show. If you really enjoyed this, give me a like or whatever you do for podcasts. Subscribe, and we'd really appreciate it. We got a lot more coming up the rears. This was a lot of fun, and hopefully the fine folks at Forum Communications and Sioux Falls Live will let me do this again tomorrow, because I would hate to free up Ben Lieber and John Stiegelmeier's day. So long. And cheers.
You need anything else, John?
No, I think I'm good, Greg. I think I'm going to tap out.
All right. Have a good night.